Hello there, my name's Paul Sennett. Kevin's obviously recovering from his recent health shock and doing really, really well from what I understand. So I thought it'd be nice to do a bit of a reflection. And apparently this week the whole theme is worship. Well, I was thinking way, way back when I read the Bible from cover to cover very slowly about a year ago, which is something I really recommend you do. You can do it in a year if you read basically three chapters at a time, and it's amazing what you find there. And in some ways, the Old Testament is where you find some of the more extraordinary things and some amazing, I guess, hymns, if you want to call them that, psalms and things like Proverbs. But with Kev not being well, I mean, I think the other amazing book in the Old Testament that many of you will be familiar with is the book of Job, a guy who was an amazing Christian a long time ago, about 1,000 years before Jesus, apparently. And he really struggled with why, as a good Christian, he kept getting ill or was ill, and it seemed so unfair to him. But above it all, he kept his faith, and faith can get all of us through our dark times. But worship way back when in those days was probably, for the Christians, was done probably a bit secretly, maybe by the side of the road, maybe in a cave, maybe in a very simple room. And in the modern world, and indeed really post-Jesus, there was a desire to build these amazing, almost like temples to get closer to God, bring people together, call them churches, call them cathedrals in some cases, call them different faiths within Christianity. And they all have, quite similar shapes, sometimes in the shape of a cross, sometimes in the round. What I've noticed, and I saw it in the coronation, that when King Charles was being crowned recently at Westminster Abbey, even the hundreds and hundreds of people who were invited hardly saw anything of what was going on because there was this big choir screen in the way. And that, I think, in the way of worship, where you're in a building but others are doing it, and you're sort of a passive member, seems like a strange way to worship to me. We saw something similar in a monastery on the Isle of Wight, which, by the way, I do recommend you visit, which is called Quarks Abbey, which is quite near Ryde on the Isle of Wight. And they welcome anyone to go to their services, which are actually, believe it or not, sung in Latin, although the one Bible reading is read in English. Why I recommend you go there, because the building is really echoey, so you get this incredible sound made by them, monks, but you are effectively a passive listener. And I think worship should be, in most cases, be something where you're an active part of it. So you're singing, or you're praying together, or you're taking communion together, or you're singing worship songs. And that's why I think the more modern way of worship, where you get these churches, maybe many of which have come from America, but they meet in gyms or theatres and places like that. Membership continues to explode for those sort of worship types. And whereas the more traditional forms are at best treading water, and in many cases, as a number of their elderly members move on, they're effectively, their numbers are going down. So I think each chooses their own way, but for me, worship should be more participatory rather than just this passive stand up, sit down, and just watch others doing the worshipping for you. Wherever you do worship, I think it's always good to do it together, because just praying on your own and reading a book on their own is still good, still great, but when you're all together, you're with like-minded people, like you're at a football match. When you're in a stand full of QPR people, well, you feel like you're part of the team and the experience. Although based on how they played this year, sometimes you'd rather not be, but QPR have had a good season in a way. They've managed to stay up. But I think being part of God's team and feeling you're worshipping together makes the whole thing more real and more alive. And that's why I think attending some form of church makes a real big difference to people's lives. So that's it. Very nice to do this for you. I hope you found it interesting, and all the very best to Kev for a speedy recovery.